The syringe trembled in Emma Carter's hand as she stared at the six-figure hospital bill. Her mother had 3 weeks to live without the experimental treatment. 23 years old, working double shifts at a convenience store, and she was about to sell herself to a monster. Luca Moretti's reputation preceded him, cold-blooded, untouchable, and utterly ruthless. His offer was simple: 3 years as his contract wife in exchange for her mother's life. No love, no children, no future, just a business arrangement with the devil himself. But when Emma collapsed 6 weeks later and the doctor said those two impossible words, "You're pregnant," everything changed. If you're ready for a story of impossible choices, dangerous love, and the mafia boss who never expected to become a father, stay with me until the end. Hit that like button and comment your city so I can see how far this story travels. The fluorescent lights of Sacred Heart Hospital buzzed overhead like dying insects, casting a sickly pallor across the linoleum floors. Emma Carter sat in the hard plastic chair outside the oncology ward, her hands folded so tightly in her lap that her knuckles had gone white. The manila envelope in her purse seemed to burn against her hip. Inside was the treatment plan that could save her mother's life, along with a price tag that might as well have been $1 billion. $375,000. For experimental immunotherapy that insurance wouldn't cover. For a chance, just a chance, that her mother might see another Christmas. Emma pressed her palms against her eyes, trying to stop the tears before they could start. Crying wouldn't help. Crying never helped. She'd learned that lesson when her father walked out 7 years ago, leaving behind nothing but debt and a daughter who had had to drop out of college to keep the lights on. "Miss Carter?" Emma's head snapped up. Dr. Rahman stood in the doorway, her dark eyes filled with that particular kind of sympathy that medical professionals perfected. Compassionate but distant, caring but not too much. She'd delivered bad news before. She'd deliver it again. "How is she?" Emma's voice cracked on the last word. Dr. Rahman sat down beside her and Emma's stomach dropped. Doctors who sat down were never delivering good news. "Your mother's latest scans show the cancer has progressed more rapidly than we anticipated," Dr. Rahman said gently. "Without intervention, we're looking at weeks, not months. The clinical trial I mentioned, it's still her best option, but we need to move quickly." "How quickly?" "We'd need to start within the next 2 weeks to have any real chance." 2 weeks. 14 days to find nearly $400,000. Emma felt hysterical laughter bubbling up in her throat. She made $11 an hour at the convenience store. She'd need to work for 34,000 hours, 3.5 years of nonstop 24-hour days, to earn that much. And that was before taxes, before rent, before the 1,000 other ways poverty nickel and dimed you to death. "I understand this is overwhelming," Dr. Rahman continued. "We have social workers who can help you explore options, payment plans, fundraising, charitable organizations. I'll find the money." The words came out harder than Emma intended. Dr. Rahman's eyebrows rose slightly. "Miss Carter, I admire your determination, but I want you to be realistic about—" "I said I'll find it." Emma stood abruptly, slinging her purse over her shoulder. "How do I get started with the trial?" Dr. Rahman studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "I'll have the coordinator reach out to you with the paperwork. But Emma—" She caught Emma's wrist gently. "Whatever you're thinking of doing, make sure it's something you can live with." Emma pulled her hand away. "As long as my mother lives, I can live with anything." The night shift at Murphy's convenience store was a special kind of purgatory. Emma stood behind the bulletproof glass partition, watching the clock tick toward midnight, while a drunk guy argued with the ATM and a group of teenagers debated which energy drink would get them the most fucked up. Her reflection stared back at her from the glass, dark circles under hazel eyes, blonde hair pulled into a messy ponytail, the name tag that identified her as Emma, here to help. She wanted to laugh at that. She couldn't even help herself. Her phone buzzed. A text from her mother's nurse. "She's asking for you. Stable tonight, but confused about where you are." Emma's eyes burned. Her mother was always confused now, the cancer eating away at more than just her body. Some days she thought Emma was still 16. Other days she didn't recognize Emma at all. The bell above the door chimed. Emma looked up automatically, her customer service smile already forming, then froze. 3 men walked in, and they didn't belong in this neighborhood. Their suits were too expensive. their shoes too shiny, their movements too predatory. The one in front was tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from marble. Sharp cheekbones, strong jaw, eyes like cold steel that swept across the store with the precision of someone assessing threats. Emma's hand drifted toward the panic button under the counter. "We're not here to rob you," the man said, his voice deep and smooth with the barest hint of an Italian accent, his eyes locked onto hers through the glass. "We're here to talk." "Store policy says no loitering," Emma replied, pleased that her voice came out steady. "Buy something or leave." The corners of his mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but close. "I like her," he said to one of his companions, a stockier man with a scar running down his left cheek. Then, to Emma, "A pack of Marlboro Reds." Emma rang up the cigarettes with shaking hands, sliding them through the payment slot. The man made no move to take them. "You're Emma Carter," he said. It wasn't a question. Fear spiked through her chest. "Who's asking?" "Someone who knows your mother is dying at Sacred Heart Hospital. Someone who knows you're 23 years old, working 2 jobs, and still $60,000 in student debt from a degree you never finished. Someone who knows you've been searching online for loan sharks and putting up GoFundMe pages that have raised exactly $843 in 6 weeks. Emma's blood ran cold. "What do you want?" "To make you an offer. I'm not interested in whatever you're selling. Not even if I'm selling your mother's life?" The words hit Emma like a physical blow. She gripped the edge of the counter to keep herself upright. The man pulled out his phone, tapped the screen a few times, then held it up to the glass. Emma saw a bank statement, an account in her mother's name with a balance of $400,000. "That money gets deposited tomorrow morning," he said quietly. "Enough for the clinical trial, the hospital bills, 6 months of in-home nursing care, and whatever else she needs. All I'm asking in return is 3 years of your life." Emma's mouth went dry. "What kind of offer is that?" "A marriage. Legally binding, completely legitimate. You'd live in my home, attend events as my wife when required, and maintain the appearance of a normal relationship. After 3 years, we divorce quietly. You walk away with enough money to finish your degree and start whatever life you want." "Why?" Emma's voice was barely a whisper. "Why me?" "Because you're desperate enough to say yes and smart enough to keep your mouth shut." His eyes hadn't left her face. "And because you're exactly the kind of woman who would make this arrangement believable." "I don't even know who you are." "Luca Moretti." He said it like she should recognize the name. And Emma did. Not personally, but from news reports and whispered rumors in the Italian neighborhood across town. The Moretti family controlled half the city's underground economy. Drugs, gambling, protection rackets. Luca Moretti was the young boss who'd taken over when his father died 3 years ago, consolidating power through a combination of strategic brutality and cold calculation. "You're a criminal," Emma breathed. "I'm a businessman with complicated interests." Luca's expression didn't change. "And I need a wife who won't ask too many questions. You need money for your mother's treatment. This arrangement benefits both of us. And if I say no, then I leave. Your mother dies in 3 weeks, and we both go on with our lives." He paused. "But you won't say no, Emma, because you'll do anything to save her. I'm simply betting that anything includes marrying a man you'll never love for 3 years of your life." Emma wanted to tell him to go to hell. She wanted to call the police. She wanted to do anything except what every rational cell in her brain was screaming at her to do. But her mother's face floated in front of her eyes, the way she'd looked before the cancer, laughing over terrible reality TV shows and burning pasta, because she always forgot to set timers. The way she'd held Emma after her father left, promising that they'd be okay, that they'd always have each other. "I can live with anything as long as she lives." "How do I know you'll actually pay?" Emma asked. Luca smiled then, really smiled, and it was terrifying because it transformed his entire face. For just a moment, he looked almost human. "Because unlike most people in my world, I keep my promises." He pulled a business card from his pocket and slid it through the payment slot. "You have 24 hours to decide. After that, the offer expires." He turned to leave, his men falling into step behind him. At the door, he paused. "For what it's worth," Luca said without looking back, "your mother raised a remarkably brave daughter. That's worth something in my world." Then he was gone, leaving Emma alone with the cigarettes he'd never intended to smoke and a business card that felt like a contract with the devil. Dab. Emma didn't sleep that night. She sat in her studio apartment, $1,200 a month for 400 square feet and a window that overlooked a dumpster, and stared at Luca Moretti's business card until the words blurred together. She'd Googled him, of course, found surprisingly little concrete information beyond society page photos from charity galas and art gallery openings. In every picture, he stood slightly apart from the crowd, watching rather than participating. In one photo, he was dancing with a beautiful blonde woman, but his eyes were focused somewhere past her shoulder. The articles about him were more illuminating. Moretti consolidates power. After rival family's mysterious disappearance, federal investigation into Moretti Enterprises yields no charges. Anonymous tip. Leads to major drug bust. Moretti connection suspected but unproven. He was dangerous. He was untouchable. He was offering her mother's life in exchange for 3 years of playing house. Emma's phone rang at 6 a.m. Her mother's nurse. She had a rough night, the nurse said gently. She's stable now, but she keeps asking for you. Keeps saying she needs to apologize for being such a burden. Emma was in her car before the call ended. Sacred Heart Hospital smelled like antiseptic and despair. Emma navigated the familiar corridors to her mother's room in the cancer ward, steeling herself for whatever she'd find. Her mother looked impossibly small in the hospital bed, her once thick brown hair now wispy and gray, her skin the color of old paper. But her eyes were clear this morning, focused and present in a way they hadn't been for weeks. "Emma," she whispered, reaching out a trembling hand. "Baby, you look exhausted." "I'm fine, Mom." Emma took her hand, careful not to disturb the IV. "How are you feeling?" "Like I'm dying," her mother laughed weakly. "But at least I know where I am today. That's something, right?" Emma's throat closed up. "The doctor says the trial could really help. They want to start soon." "Emma?" Her mother's grip tightened surprisingly strong. "We both know I can't afford that trial, and I won't let you destroy yourself trying to pay for it." "You're not destroying me. Listen to me." Her mother's voice was firm despite its weakness. "I've had a good life. I got to raise an amazing daughter. I don't have regrets. But if you sacrifice everything trying to save me, if you end up alone and broke and bitter, that would kill me faster than any cancer." Emma felt tears streaming down her face. "I can't just let you die. You're not letting me do anything. Cancer doesn't ask permission." Her mother reached up to wipe Emma's tears. "Promise me you won't do anything crazy. Promise me you'll take care of yourself." Emma thought about Luca Moretti's cold eyes and colder offer. About 3 years of her life traded for her mother's survival. "I promise," Emma lied. She called the number on the business card from the hospital parking lot. A woman's voice answered on the second ring, crisp and professional. "Moretti Enterprises." "I need to speak to Luca Moretti," Emma said. "Tell him Emma Carter is accepting his offer." There was a pause. "Please hold." Classical music filled the line. Emma leaned her head against the steering wheel, trying to convince herself this was the right decision. Trying to convince herself it was a decision at all, rather than the only possible choice in a world that had stopped offering her any real options. "Emma," Luca's voice cut through the music. "I wasn't certain you'd call." "I need guarantees," Emma said. "The money goes to the hospital first, before any wedding, before I sign anything. My mother's treatment starts immediately." "Agreed. Anything else?" "I want it in writing that you won't—" Emma's courage faltered. "That you won't expect—" "Sex?" Luca's tone was businesslike, almost bored. "I'm buying a wife, not a prostitute. You'll have your own bedroom, your own space. I expect you to attend certain social functions and maintain the appearance of a happy marriage in public. What happens behind closed doors is your business." "Why do you even need a wife?" "That's not part of our arrangement." "I'm marrying you. I think I deserve to know." Another pause. Then, "My world values traditional family structures. A wife provides legitimacy, respectability. It opens certain doors that remain closed to bachelors no matter how wealthy, and it stops people from asking uncomfortable questions about my personal life." "Are you gay?" Emma asked bluntly. Luca laughed. an unexpected sound that seemed to surprise him as much as it did Emma. No, but I'm also not interested in the kind of relationship most people expect from marriage. This arrangement solves several problems simultaneously, for both of us. I want one more thing, Emma said. If anything happens to you, if you die or go to prison or whatever, the deal stands. The money for my mother doesn't disappear. I'll have my lawyers draw up an ironclad prenuptial agreement. Your mother's care will be secured regardless of what happens to me. Is there anything else? Emma closed her eyes. When do we do this? The money transfers to the hospital this afternoon. We'll be married by the end of the week. I'll send a car for you tomorrow at 10 a.m. We need to discuss the specific terms of our arrangement and sign the paperwork. His voice softened slightly. You're making the right choice, Emma. Don't, Emma said harshly. Don't pretend this is anything other than what it is. You're buying me, and I'm selling myself. Let's not dress it up as something noble. Fair enough. I'll see you tomorrow. The line went dead. Emma sat in her car for a long time, watching nurses and doctors and families move through the parking lot. People visiting loved ones, people saying goodbye, people caught in the same desperate machinery of modern healthcare that had brought her to this moment. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Sacred Heart Hospital confirms receipt of $400,000 donation for Patricia Carter's treatment. Trial begins Monday. LM. It was real. It was happening. Emma started the car and drove to work, because what else was she supposed to do? Her life had just been sold, but rent was still due on Friday. The car that picked Emma up the next morning was a sleek black Mercedes with windows tinted dark enough to be illegal. The driver was the same scarred man who'd accompanied Luca to the convenience store. He held the door open without speaking, his face expressionless. Emma slid into the back seat and tried not to feel like she was being kidnapped. They drove through the city's downtown, past the financial district, and into an older neighborhood where historic brownstones had been converted into expensive apartments. The car pulled up in front of a building that looked like it belonged in a European city, all ornate stonework and wrought iron balconies. Top floor, the driver said. His first words to her. The elevator required a key card. It rose smoothly, opening directly into a penthouse that stole Emma's breath. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city skyline. The furniture was modern but comfortable. Leather and dark wood, abstract art on the walls, a kitchen with appliances Emma had only seen in magazines. Everything was immaculate, almost sterile in its perfection. Luca stood by the windows, silhouetted against the morning light. He'd traded yesterday's suit for dark slacks and a white dress shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing surprisingly muscular forearms. Without the formal jacket, he looked younger, maybe early 30s, and somehow more dangerous. Welcome, Mutt, he said, turning to face her. Would you like coffee? I'd like to get this over with. Direct. I appreciate that. He gestured to the dining table where several neat stacks of paper waited. My lawyers prepared a prenuptial agreement covering all the terms we discussed. You're welcome to have your own attorney review it, though I think you'll find everything is exactly as promised. Emma sat down and started reading. The legal language was dense, but the core terms were clear. Marriage for 36 months, after which they'd file for divorce citing irreconcilable differences. During the marriage, Emma would receive a monthly allowance of $10,000 for personal expenses, use of the penthouse and a vacation home in the Hamptons, and access to a credit card for anything related to her role as Luca's wife. In exchange, she'd attend required social functions, maintain the appearance of a legitimate marriage, and sign an NDA, preventing her from ever discussing Luca's business affairs. The section on her mother's care was even more detailed. $400,000 transferred immediately, with an additional trust fund of $200,000 to cover future medical expenses, in-home nursing care, or whatever else Patricia Carter might need. If Luca died or was incarcerated, the trust continued unchanged. If he divorced Emma before the 3 years ended for any reason other than infidelity. On her part, she'd receive a one-time payment of $500,000. It was the most coldly transactional document Emma had ever seen, and it was more money than she'd make in 10 years of working at the convenience store. This says I can't work during the marriage, Emma said, pointing to a clause near the end. My wife doesn't need to work, Luca replied. It would raise questions. What am I supposed to do all day? Whatever you want. Read, shop, go back to school if you'd like. I'll pay for it. The only requirements are that you're available when I need you for social functions and that you don't embarrass me publicly. What counts as embarrassing you? Don't get arrested. Don't cheat on me. Don't tell people our marriage is fake. He leaned back against the windows, studying her with those unsettling gray eyes. The role I need you to play is simple. Devoted wife who's madly in love with her husband. Can you do that? I'm a terrible liar. Then it's fortunate that you won't need to say much. I talk enough for both of us at these events. You just need to smile, hold my arm, and look like you're enjoying yourself. He paused. And occasionally let me touch you. Nothing inappropriate. A hand on your back, fingers intertwined, that sort of thing. People need to believe we're genuinely together. Emma's skin prickled at the thought of him touching her. What about behind closed doors? I meant what I said yesterday. You'll have complete privacy. This penthouse has 3 bedrooms. You can choose whichever you prefer. I work late most nights, so we likely won't see much of each other. Think of it as roommates with occasional public appearances. Roommates who are legally married. Precisely. Emma looked down at the prenuptial agreement. This was insane. This was dangerous. This was wrong in about 15 different ways. But her mother would live. Where do I sign? She asked. Well, they were married in a judge's chambers on a rainy Thursday afternoon. Luca wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Emma's car. Emma wore a simple cream dress she'd bought on clearance from a department store because she'd be damned if she'd let him pay for her wedding dress, even in a fake wedding. The ceremony lasted less than 10 minutes. The judge, clearly someone who owed Luca a favor, asked the required questions without any of the usual warmth or sentimentality. Emma's hand shook as she signed the marriage certificate. Luca's signature was steady and decisive. You may kiss the bride, the judge said, sounding bored. Luca turned to Emma, his expression unreadable. We don't have to. They're watching, Emma murmured, nodding toward his men standing by the door. Make it believable. Something flickered in Luca's eyes, surprise maybe, or respect. He cupped her face gently, his palms warm against her cheeks. Emma's breath caught. Just this once, he said softly, so only she could hear. The kiss was brief and chaste, barely more than a brush of lips. But Emma felt it everywhere, a spark of electricity that traveled down her spine and settled low in her stomach. Luca pulled back quickly, releasing her face like it had burned him. Mrs. Moretti, he said formally. Mr. Moretti, Emma replied. They signed the last of the paperwork in silence. When it was done, Luca's driver appeared with an umbrella to escort them to the car. They drove back to the penthouse through afternoon traffic, neither speaking. Emma twisted the simple gold band on her finger. Luca had produced it that morning, along with a stunning engagement ring she'd refused to wear until he'd insisted it was part of maintaining appearances. Your things will be moved tomorrow, Luca said as they entered the elevator. I took the liberty of packing everything from your apartment. If I missed anything important, let me know. You went through my apartment? I had people go through your apartment. I thought it would be easier than making you do it yourself. Emma didn't know whether to be grateful or violated. I need to visit my mother. Tell her what happened. No. She turned to stare at him. Excuse me? You can't tell her about our arrangement. If word gets out, I'm not going to tell her the truth, Emma interrupted. I'm going to tell her I fell in love and got married quickly because your work requires traveling and we didn't want to wait. She deserves to know why her treatment suddenly got approved. Luca studied her for a moment. You're a better liar than you think. I'm a daughter who doesn't want her mother dying while worried about me. That's different. The elevator opened into the penthouse. Emma walked straight to the bedrooms, choosing the one farthest from what was obviously Luca's master suite. It was beautiful. King-sized bed, ensuite bathroom with a soaking tub, a walk-in closet bigger than her old apartment's kitchen. The windows overlooked the city, twinkling with evening lights. Emma sat on the edge of the bed and finally let herself feel it. The weight of what she'd just done. She'd married a criminal, sold 3 years of her life, become someone's possession in exchange for her mother's survival. A knock at the door. Luca stood in the hallway, still in his suit, but with his tie loosened. I'm hosting a dinner party tomorrow night, he said. Business associates and their wives. It'll be your first official appearance as my wife. Can you be ready by 7? Do I have a choice? No, but I thought I'd ask anyway." He turned to leave, then paused. "Emma, what you did today, choosing your mother's life over your pride, that took courage. A different kind than most people in my world understand, but courage nonetheless." "I didn't do it for courage," Emma said quietly. "I did it because I didn't have any other options." "We always have options. You just chose the hardest one." His eyes met hers. "Get some rest. Tomorrow we start convincing the world this marriage is real." He left, closing the door softly behind him. Emma sat in her beautiful new prison and tried to remember what freedom had felt like. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of carefully orchestrated appearances. Emma attended dinner parties where men discussed business in vague terms, while their wives evaluated her with sharp eyes. She smiled through gallery openings and charity galas, Luca's hand a constant presence at the small of her back. She learned to laugh at jokes she didn't understand, to deflect personal questions with practiced ease, to play the role of the devoted wife who'd been swept off her feet by the charming Luca Moretti. It was exhausting, but her mother was responding to treatment. The tumors were shrinking, the doctors were cautiously optimistic, and Emma discovered that she could survive almost anything if it meant watching her mother's face regain color and life. The penthouse became familiar in the way prisons probably became familiar to long-term inmates. Emma knew which floorboards creaked, which windows had the best views, which rooms Luca avoided and which he preferred. They existed around each other like planets in separate orbits, polite, distant, occasionally colliding when social obligations required. Luca worked constantly, disappearing into his home office for 12-hour stretches, or leaving before dawn for meetings he never discussed. Emma spent her days visiting her mother, reading in the library, and trying not to think too hard about what she'd become. 3 weeks and 4 days after their wedding, Emma woke up feeling wrong. Not sick exactly, just off balance and slightly dizzy, like the world had tilted a few degrees when she wasn't paying attention. She attributed it to stress and lack of sleep. The nightmares had started recently, dreams where she was drowning in paperwork and debt, where her mother's hospital bed floated away no matter how fast Emma swam. But the dizzy spells got worse. On a Monday morning, Emma stood up from the breakfast table too quickly and had to grip the counter to keep from falling. Her vision grayed at the edges. "Are you all right?" Luca's voice came from the doorway. He'd been working in his office all night, his shirt wrinkled and his eyes shadowed. "Fine," Emma lied. "Just stood up too fast." "You look pale." "I'm always pale." But Luca was already pulling out his phone. "Marco, I need Dr. Castellano to make a house call. Today." He listened for a moment. "I don't care what his schedule looks like. Tell him it's urgent." "I don't need a doctor," Emma protested. "I'm just tired." "You nearly fainted. You're seeing a doctor." "You're not my—" Emma caught herself before saying husband, because he was her husband, legally and publicly. "You can't just order me around." "I can, and I am. Dr. Castellano will be here in an hour. Sit down before you actually pass out." Emma wanted to argue, but another wave of dizziness washed over her. She sat. Luca disappeared, returning moments later with a glass of water and some crackers. "Eat something. You skipped breakfast yesterday, too." "How would you know?" "Because I pay attention." He set the food in front of her. "Even when you think I'm not." Dr. Castellano arrived exactly an hour later, a distinguished older man with kind eyes and the manner of someone who'd seen everything. He examined Emma in her bedroom while Luca paced in the hallway outside, his footsteps a rhythmic counterpoint to the doctor's questions. "Have you been under unusual stress lately?" Dr. Castellano asked. Emma almost laughed. "You could say that. Any changes in appetite, sleep patterns? When was your last menstrual period?" Emma had to think about that. With everything that had happened, the wedding, moving, the constant social obligations, she'd stopped keeping track. "I don't know. Maybe 6 weeks ago? 7? Dr. Castellano's expression shifted subtly. "I'd like to run a few tests, just routine blood work," and he pulled a small package from his bag. "This?" Emma stared at the pregnancy test. "That's not possible." "Humor me." 10 minutes later, Emma sat on the bathroom floor and watched 2 pink lines appear on the test strip. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. She and Luca had they'd barely even touched beyond the necessary public appearances. Except A fragment of memory surfaced, hazy and uncertain, their wedding night.